Hello, and thank you for taking the time out of your very busy schedules to join me today. I hope that there is something within this video that is a benefit to you or to somebody that you know. Please like, subscribe, and share this video. Leave a comment down below. Sharing really does help the analytics and helps the channel to grow. So I wanted to start with, YouTube has come out that they're going to be censoring what they consider to be borderline content. For this kind of reason, because, well, apparently I can fall under the sword of Damocles being on YouTube. You can also find us on Getter, Gab, Rumble, Minds, Odyssey, and Locals. Locals, I'll probably here be soon getting things finished and finalized with that, where you can go ahead and we'll be doing, hopefully soon, special content for locals.com. The links for this can be found in the description for these, so we'll see what happens. Again, what is borderline content? Well, that's anything that might fall under misinformation or disinformation. These are two separate terms that mean two separate things. Unfortunately, they tend to get kicked around a little bit by politicians and to be almost interchangeable, but what it is misinformation is when someone just gets the facts wrong and puts the information out there. Another reason I've taken a little bit of time, and it's been a little bit of time since I put a video, because I want to make sure I have good information that I give when I do these videos. This information is information put out by an enemy nation or state in order to disrupt the flow of information from the government to the people. Now that we've covered misinformation and disinformation, one of the things I wanted to try was kind of going back to my old roots. So, or some of the things I was doing, which is showing the receipts. What I wanted to show, because this is kind of concerning, what I wanted to show was we're going to start with the U.S., the United States, GDP growth rate, and then we're going to take a look at China's GDP growth rate, and then I'll explain the reason for why I'm bringing these up. So what we have here is the United States GDP growth rate. As you can see on the screen, let me get the right screen up. Okay, we down at January of 2020, we had negative growth. This would coincide with the lockdowns. We had more as the lockdowns got more stringent. You can see the drop all the way up to July of 2020, and then we had the sudden growth, which is when they ended lockdowns. This had nothing to do with Biden's Inflation Reduction Act. You can see on the chart there, when it came into effect, it would have been where we're sitting at the 0.6. No, I don't think it had anything to do with it. And even then, it's a small amount. He says we're creating new jobs. Well, when he says that, he's referring to the 9 million jobs that are supposed to be created, that are created on paper, unbreaded, on paper, that show the growth of 9 million new jobs based on the fact of the new green energy that's coming in and all the jobs that would, in theory, be created from these green energy bills that were passed. And it also includes the 87,000 new IRS agents that are being hired. New jobs. Yeah, he's creating new jobs, bigger government. Democrats like to spend. They've been spending a long time. Now, the other thing, the reason I wanted to bring this up, and you can see we've had a little bit of growth, and now we've had 2 periods of negative growth, which traditionally meant we were in a recession. Now let's look at China's. You can see where it went down from the initial lockdowns of COVID and then spiked up a lot quicker than us because they opened up a lot quicker than we did. So they had a giant spike much quicker than we did economically. And then they've had their concerns. More lockdowns have come along until recently. You can see the very stringent lockdowns that they are currently going through. And you see the growth on that is negative 2.6. This is not good because usually when they start having, when other countries start having a negative growth, they start looking to war because, well, war means money. The one reason I wanted to bring this up, though, more than anything was also coinciding with this huge recession, because obviously they haven't had a lot of growth. But it seems that Xi Jinping has been under house arrest. This happened on Friday, September 23rd. He was rumored to be placed under house arrest in China, and because of the results of a military coup. You can put that with the GDP. I tend to put a little bit more faith into the rumor that they might be looking at overthrowing him. I don't know. For some reason, he's been under house arrest, is the rumor that's coming out. So we'll see what happens. Keep an eye out, because right now I also wanted to talk about something I thought was kind of funny, because I'm not a big beer drinker. But have you heard that they're predicting not only are we going to have food shortages coming up here, and you can see it when you go to the stores, because of they're claiming it's a bottleneck in shipping and etc. But if that were the case, they're also claiming, and this is funny, this is incredibly funny, there's a shortage of CO2. Wait, isn't CO2 destroying the planet through climate change? So there's not enough CO2, though, to actually be using it to put into beer, into sodas. They do a lot of quick freeze, frozen pizzas, stuff like that is all frozen because they use CO2. Well, there's a CO2 shortage, so it looks like we might actually be looking at beer prices raising too as well, something that was supposed to be immune to that kind of thing, recessions and depressions. Also, has anybody also noticed that the price of lithium is skyrocketing right now? This is an example of capitalism. Now, lithium, as we know, is a rare earth mineral, and an example of capitalism, supply and demand. Being rare in the first place already has it at a high rate. But now, with Biden's new green energy deal, even if it's just America, there's an obvious demand that exceeds the supply, including having all vehicles be driven, having all vehicles being battery powered, the solar panels. Lithium is used for these things. Lithium batteries. So there's a huge supply and going to be a huge demand for lithium. It's the same kind of thing almost with oil. They think there's a limited amount of oil. They look at what the demand might be, and they make a prediction of how much oil is left, and therefore that's how they set the price. I know it's really wacky and weird. But with lithium, again, so its price has been skyrocketing lately. I don't know if anybody's noticed that. The next thing I kind of wanted to mention, I'm going to move this one up here. Putin, also with what's going on, Putin is looking at, I don't know if he has yet, but was looking at annexing the countries he already controls, and says that he will use nukes if he feels that Russia is threatened by the West. Right now, it's really hard to believe we're the good guys in this. And I say that because, again, we've known for years Ukraine is one of the most corrupt countries in the world, politically, etc. It's great for money laundering, both Russian and American. I mean, it's been known for years. Even when I was growing up, we'd heard about Ukraine being corrupt, one of the most corrupt countries to live in. And so it's really interesting now. Of course, we've got NATO. United Kingdom has just bumped up to push a bunch of money to Ukraine. We've sent them over $87 billion in non-obligational loans, which means they don't have to pay that money back to us, win or lose. That $87 billion is being taken from your pocket as the taxpayer and given to the Ukrainian government. Enjoy that thought, because that's what's happening when they take your taxes and the government uses the money. It prints the money based off the concept that you're going to work down in the future to pay off this loan, which again, you've already got these people who are doing this whole quietly quitting thing. And we used to call them slackers when I was growing up, just plain and simple slackers. Oh, I need to be paid more money for the work I do. Well, unfortunately, your government's already paid out the work you're going to do, so you need to do the work regardless of how much you're paid. That's how the government sees it. Anyways, Putin has called forth 300,000 troops So right now you find out that there's what's commonly circulating right now is how to break your arm. Trips to Turkey out of Russia skyrocketed to $1,000 because people are trying to get out of Russia because they don't want to fight in this war, especially when you've got uh, Putin talking about using nukes and Biden talking about returning said nuke fire. Oh, lovely. Just lovely. And you've got China who says within the next 3 weeks from the taping of this episode, within the next 3 weeks, it's expected that China is actually going to make a move on Taiwan. But again, if Xi Jinping is being held in house arrest by the military, it's either how reluctant are they to go to war or how reluctant was he to go to war to take Taiwan. That is a concern that we will find out here, I'm very sure, within the near future. Kind of a worrisome prospect. But the 300,000 troops also hasn't been called up by Russia since World War II. This is another concerning fact. And again, the last time Ukraine was at the negotiation table with Russia, Biden told them to stop. And they did. Makes you wonder. Because again, Biden does make a lot of money. Let's look at how his family made all that money from the Iran war when we went, or Iraq war, and from Afghanistan and the rebuilding. You can take the time to look into that, but Biden's family did make a lot of money through various odd connections of people they knew. We all heard about the migrants going to Martha's Vineyard, how it was considered to be inhumane for them to have been shipped there. Man, I'd be happy to be shipped there too. Not to mention the day after they sent all of those whole 50 migrants to the military base, they turned around and had 50 open jobs for their annual wine and cheese festival that's coming up here soon. Look, we don't need to go into the fact, we all know it, Democrats are racist. They have been racist, they have been segregationist since the beginning. All the CRT is segregation, plain and simple. Like Millie and needing to know about his white rage. So anyways, they were so worried. They're saying how it's inhumane that he did all this. I'm sure you've heard about it. Anyways, he had them shipped. They shipped them off to a military, and they act like these border states and border towns. Oh, it's no problem to handle it. They should be used to all these migrants. But that's the problem. It's so overflooded. It's so overwhelming. Even the city I'm living in, which I would rather not be here, but I have obligations. You know, we're starting to see more and more tents show up. We're seeing people who use drugs and they just get on the bus and sit on the bus all day. More of that, because why? This city is a sanctuary city. So this is why I urge those in the area, as a matter of fact, everybody, to go out and vote. I will go ahead and include a link on where to register to vote and how you can register to vote. It's really important. It was a man I consider a great man, President Ronald Reagan, that once said, our freedoms are one election away. And it kind of proves true. It's part of the reason I'm not a big fan of Trump, and I'll say it, because Trump, you locked us down. You had this vaccine pushed. You moved politically on quote-unquote scientific information that wasn't valid. I'm not a big fan of Trump, but he's also at this point the best we have to offer. But those migrants, a whole 50 of them, yeah, they're now at a military base in Cape Cod because, you know, supposedly they don't have any place for them to stay. Obama's mansion would do just fine. It's a 10-room mansion. Heck, you remember the parties that Obama was throwing without the mask, or we were all being told we need to wear masks. He had put them under tents. It's only 50 people. They'd fit in those tents just fine. No, can't do it. And we won't get into the fact of how good old Barry Obama. Funny thing is you don't see him living in the house in Chicago he owns. He stays at Martha's Vineyard, one of the most divisive presidents. Again, he was incredibly divisive. He was a horrible president. Take that as you will. He was. Oh, and then there, of course, there was, now we've all heard about the drop boxes and all the changes that were made for COVID for the election. And a lot of state Supreme Courts coming forward saying, yeah, that was illegal and it shouldn't have been done. That violates the state's constitution. That method shouldn't be done. Now we're talking about methods. Okay. We're not talking about the vote itself. We're just talking about what was done to get people to vote. Okay. The ballot boxes, ballot harvesting. Now, oddly enough, I live in a Democratic state. It is as blue as can be. As I said, this state was a Confederate state until the Union came. Speaking of which, it reminds me of the good, the bad, and the ugly. Yeah, it didn't take long for the South to move out of here, and they needed New Mexico in order to work their way to the California gold fields. Because if they could get possession of that, they would have had the money to continue to fund their war. That was another problem, was their economy wasn't as good. But I know. I digress. It's all history, right? So Harris says that banning drop boxes, bribing people for food, in line for water, which has always been illegal. I mean, most states say, yeah, you can give food and water, but you can't bribe people when they're in line to vote to give them food and water. Some states you can't do it within 100 feet. Some states are 50 feet, where you can give food and water to people standing in line. Personally, I think elections should be kept to one day, and you should have to do it in person. And that day should be a national holiday for everyone, including kids. I honestly believe it. We should make it a holiday so that everybody can go to vote. And Kamala Harris is saying that voting in person is not democratic. I wish I had that statement to throw up to show you the receipts on, but I don't. But it was pretty impressive when I heard her say that to vote in person is not democratic. There's so much wrong with that statement. Heck, look at China. You have Xi Jinping, who's also looking at setting him up as the permanent ruler of China, basically making himself emperor of China again. That could be another reason why what's going on in China is. It is, again, I encourage you to keep an eye on what's going on in China. Now, Kamala Harris had also said, and this kind of, I laughed at it. Kamala Harris said that it's anti-democratic to change voting laws to pre-COVID laws. Because that's all most states want to do, is change the voting laws back to what they were pre-COVID. So we have the Vice President of the United States saying how it's undemocratic to do that. They really want to make sure they stay in power. It's like Kamala Harris was saying when she was running as Vice President. What's going on is all about power. Nothing more than power. So here you go, is to keep the rich in power and to make the poor poor. So with that, I'm about halfway through with my notes. I want to say thank you very much for taking the time out of your very busy schedules to take a look at what I have to share. Please like, subscribe, share, leave a comment down below, and look for us on the alternative platforms just in case YouTube decides to censor me for being borderline content. With as small as my channel is, I would have zero say in trying to fight it if they decide to cancel my channel. So please feel free to look up the other sources that I've mentioned. With that, I want to say thank you very much. United we stand, divided we fall. God bless you, and God bless America.